Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner. Today's episode is one I know many of you will be happy to see, and that would be an update to Disaster Dragon, and pretty much how my deck is looking at this point in the format. Now, as I mentioned just briefly, I'm not going to Nats. It's just far too much money for me to spend at this moment. I mean, I think it would cost me well over $1,500 at least to get there at this point. I'd have to save up well in advance for any event that requires me flying to the United States, because it's not cheap. It isn't. I mean, what? A flight to California costs about $2,000, and I want to do that just to play card games? I don't know. I have no idea how all these pro players are able to just fly all over the country and just keep playing at these events when it clearly costs money. Or maybe it just costs less money to fly to all over the place in the United States. I don't really know. Honestly, I wish Canada had more than one YCS a year, and in places other than Toronto. I mean, friggin' A. Is it so hard for Calgary to get a YCS? Or even Winnipeg? Fuck, bring it here to Saskatchewan. We're booming. We have all kinds of people working here. We have all kinds of places where... Ugh. That's a rant for another video, but... yeah, basically, this is just what I feel would be the best deck for me to play. I've used Disaster Dragon the longest, so it's become the deck that I'm most familiar with and comfortable with. And to be perfectly honest, it has some pretty good matchups anyway. I mean, if Chaos Dragon is the most played deck of this format because it's so popular, then Disaster Dragon will have a lot of easy wins because it smashes Chaos Dragon. 90% of the time, you will beat that deck because they have very few means of getting around a protected Quackamy Drago. Yes, they can Raikou it, they can Dark Hole it, and they can Card Tripper it. But that's all they've got in the first game. If you can utilize your Forbidden Lances, your Chalices, Compulse, your back row, in order to keep your Quackamy Drago alive, they can't win. I mean... and if you open with Future Fusion, then obviously you're going to have a major leg up on that deck, because then you'll be able to start toolboxing. If they open with Future Fusion, it does stink, but depending on how they follow up that Future Fusion, i.e. they don't summon a Pulsar Dragon, then you could probably still shut them down because their graveyard, they'll have shit in there, but they can't do anything with it because you got Quackamy Drago out. And if you can make a Stardust Dragon alongside Quackamy Drago, then it's pretty much GG, because now they can't even pop your Drago or your back row. As far as the other decks this format go, Disaster Dragon has always had a pretty even matchup with Rabbit. It just depends on how the players open. If Rabbit opens bullshit, then you have a lot of difficulty in trying to get around it. But if they open pretty fair, and I'm talking just maybe the turn 1 Rabbit, but no follow-up Tour Guide or shit like that, then you can play around it because you can summon bigger monsters in Logia, and you also run 1-for-1s in back row to get rid of their Logia and force out the negate. And then as far as Inzektors go, well, Inzektors poop on a lot of stun decks because of Dragonfly plus Hornet. So, yeah. I mean, if you can disrupt that, though, then it's not that bad. And then games 2 and 3, you can side in Shadow Mirror and other stuff to make certain they can't go off. Game 1 against Inzektors is the hardest game 1. Games 2 and 3, though, go by much easier depending on how you side and how they side. Just watch out for sided and dimensional fissures. And then as far as the rogue matchups go, I think Disaster Dragon's always had a fairly good rogue matchup. Its ability to adapt to multiple deck strategies on the fly has always been one of the more appealing aspects of it. The biggest problem with this deck is it's a skill deck playing in a no-skill format, and you have very little room for errors. If you make a screw up against a deck such as Rabbit, Inzektors, or Chaos Dragons, they're going to capitalize and just go blarg, and then you're going to be like, well, fuck. I have just this in my hand, and they've got a gigantic field of monsters. What do I do? So that's probably been one of the more difficult reasons to play this deck. But if you can get around that, then you'll do very well, because Disaster Dragon is a deck that rewards good players. It's one of those skill-intensive decks that you have to constantly be careful of what you're doing, taking into consideration of what your opponent is doing. It's not an autopilot deck like those top decks. And yes, they are autopilot. There is some skill involved with playing them, but more often than not, though, they're just ridiculously easy to run. That being said, though, I'll now give you guys my deck profile, so let's get on with this, shall we? Hit that intro song. A better theme does not exist. Okay, so I'm currently running Anti-Meta Disaster, as I just happen to feel it's best suited for handling the meta. Totem Dragon is still viable, but honestly, I think just being able to run shit like Veiler and Thunder King and non-dragons in your extra deck is a huge boon for the Anti-Meta Disaster, and it just happens to have better matchups against the top 3. And we'll start with my monsters. 2 Darkness Metal Dragon. I took one out to fit in Gorz. I just happen to feel that with a much lower dragon count, 3 of this guy might be just a bit too much. I might change it back though. More play will need to be done in order to determine it, but Darkness Metal Dragon is the best dragon in this game, and he's just been an amazing card this format. Will he go to 1? Who knows? I happen to think that even at 1, this deck will still be good, because as good as Darkness Metal Dragon is, and don't get me wrong, he's an amazing card, it's the other cards in the deck that have always made Disaster Dragon so good, and there is none better than Quackmere Drago, the Troll. So, as I mentioned before, this guy is absolutely fantastic against Chaos Dragons, as they have very little means getting around this guy. They can't summon their bigger monsters, they only have their weenie guys such as Raikou and the Trooper to get around it through effects. I mean, Lila's too small, Eclipse Wyvern's too small. There's just very few ways they have to get around this guy. And he's great against a lot of other decks too. And not in the sense that you'd think of. I mean, you may think that turn 1 Quackmere Drago against Rescue Rabbit is pretty bad, right? Because they can just go Rabbit Dock. That's true, but if they don't have the Rabbit, then their other play is what? Tour Guide, right? Quackmere Drago shuts down Tour Guide from your Underworld. And this in turn prevents a lot of decks from making that turn 1 Zambanes, turn 1 Leviathan Dragon, turn 1 Tim Tempo, the something Din, Acid Golem. Being able to shut off Tour Guide plays shuts off a couple combos from a lot of decks because they can't search out Sangan, they can't get another Tour Guide, they can't do this or that. So he's good for in that sense, and he also shuts down access to a lot of good rank 4s such as Utopia, Polyprotective, Steelstorm Roach. The only rank 4s you can really make while Quackmere Drago out is specialized stuff like the Yvelzars, Gemini Pearl, and Kachikochi Dragon. So he's also good in that sense. And he shuts off Gorz, Blacklisted Soldier, Battle Fader, Tragodia. Those type of cards are seeing more play. Overall, Drago's still an amazing card. I would run 3. Even in an Anti-Meta Disaster, it's just too good. And he's also 1900, so he crashes with Thunder King and Doom Cow. 3 Wyvern. I may be running only 2 Darkness Metal Dragons, but I still happen to like the 3 Wyverns because every time I run 2, I draw 2 of them. And 1800 beater is still not that bad. Plus, he allows you to access your Light and Dark rank 4s and your most of your Synchro monsters. Then double Hieratic Dragon of Gebeb. Mentioned before why this card is great. You beat over a weenie monster, you get out of vanilla, and you just do rank 4 plays. I'm liking 2 at the moment, I just don't happen to have 2. This is just pretty much a proxy until I can get my second one, which will be at some point. And because you're running shit like Forbidden Lance, then it's not actually that difficult for this guy to get his effect off against bigger monsters too. Basically anything with 2500 attack with a Forbidden Lance, Gebeb will kill, and then you just get a plus, and then do rank 4 plays such as Queen Dragon and whatnot. Fluster Dragon is my vanilla. I like this over Alexandrite Dragon. Again, I mentioned why. You can special summon it with Quackmere Drago out being out. 1 Exploder Dragon to kill boss monsters, Delta Flyer, your best tuner, and 1 Tech Dread Dragon. I'm running this over Mass Dragon at this moment, as Dread Dragon, his effect can't be stopped with Solemn Warning, and he doesn't put monsters on the field, which leaves them vulnerable to Smash Ground or Soul Taker, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a means of searching out my smaller dragons while also not having to worry about him being hit by that kind of stuff. Plus he's a level 2 tuner, and he beats over Tour Guide and like other small monsters like that. Then for the non-dragons, 1 Tech Gorz. I mentioned before, I'm running this over my 3rd Darkness Metal Dragon. He's just a good card to have in this format in general. Your opponent swings and tries to no OTK. Gore saves you for that turn, which then gives you an opportunity to try and play out of it. Double Thunder King, yes. I'm running this over Doomcal. Doomcal is nice, I'll give it that. But ultimately I decided just to go with the more safer route with Thunder King. He shuts off duality, he'll kill in here in special summons. It's just, if your opponent goes blarg, then you draw the Thunder King, you're like, well, what's this gonna do? Set? And that kind of stuff. But he's still a good card. 1900 beater, whatnot. Double Veiler, gotta run him in this deck. And then for the spells, a full playset of Forbidden Lance. This card has just been too good as of late. Saves your monsters from removal such as Bottomless, Dark Hole. Also lets your smaller monsters get over bigger guys like Gebeb over, what's a good example? A Logia that has no materials on it, or a Dolka even. You get over those monsters and you pull out your vanilla. Let's Darkness Metal Dragon get around Blackluster Soldier, and just all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Damage step shenanigans are always fun. Speaking of damage step, Double Chalice. This is what I'm running over Doomcal. Either or is fine. It's just Chalice has a little bit more flexibility in what it's able to attack. You can flip it up. I mean, you can use stuff during it on stuff in the damage step. You can use it to make your guys bigger. Overall, it's just, yeah, flexibility and practicality. All that kind of stuff. Very good investigation. Double Space. With so much Chaos Dragons being played, the third space might be a little bit dead at times. You're pretty much going to be using space on the Future Fusion, that's it. And with Rabbit, you're kind of just going to be spacing their Macrocosmos or any other like one card that you're afraid of. You can side in the third, or you can main deck the third if you want. It's just a bit of a personal preference. I find that 3 MST is a bit much right now. And then I got my staples, Book, Hole, Future Fusion. Is this going to get banned? Who knows. Heavy Storm, and Monster Reborn. And for my traps, I'm running Double Bottomless, Double Compulse. I'm running this over Soul Taker in the main, as I just happen to feel it's a more powerful one-for-one card. I mean, there are pros and cons to this over Soul Taker. It's just, I like being able to get rid of Zen mains and Stardust and stuff like that. Plus, it's chainable one-for-one removal for when you have those times where they blind MST and you just compulse back their big guy. Or you get their set monster out of the way and then punch for game with Drago. And then you've got your remaining staple trap cards. Double TT and Solemn Brigade. So that is it from the main deck. The extra deck is pretty much like this. 1 5-headed dragon, 1 colossal fighter. You just get around those 2800 guys such as Darkness Metal Dragons and just beat over them. Very useful card, especially with Samurai seeing more play. Now he gains an attack boost, and you can just beat over their Samurai. Thought Ruler Archfiend. People are playing Prison, Compulse, Chalice, Lance. Thought Ruler stops them. Scrap Dragon and Stardust Dragon, your 2 best level 8 dragons for synchros. Black Rose, because it's Black Rose. Brionac, no explanation needed here. It's still the best one of the best synchros in this game. And then for Xyz, 1 Utopia, 1 Pearl, 1 Roach, 1 Polyparative, Kachi Kochi Dragon, Clean Dragon, Levier, and Leviathan. And that's it. That is pretty much how my Disaster Dragon is looking at this point. If I were to make any changes, it might be if I'm going to keep Compulse in the deck or not. With people starting to play only 2 MSTs in their main, Fiendish Chain might become more viable. And if I run Fiendish Chain, then I would take out Gores and put in Darkness Metal Dragon and all other kinds of crazy stuff like that. So, yeah, even though this is my build for now, who knows what might be in a couple weeks. Still, I know you guys have wanted to see what my deck is looking like, and I am more than happy to oblige you guys on this. The upcoming decks I might do at this point would probably be Gadgets and Heretics, because I've gone back to the Tour Guide Chaos build, and it's been working out very nicely. I think it's probably the best version of Heretics to play at this point in the format. But, yeah, that's another video entirely. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching, and until the next time, take care.